Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of the Sunderland Poltergeist, series 3 of the Poltergeist Project with me, your haunted historian, Stephen Miller. It's been a strange old story so far, certainly very different from the first 2 series. It's been great to see it picked up in the local Sunderland press as well. So far in this series, for the first time ever, I've outlined the correct timeline of this seemingly religious poltergeist story from 1840 and introduced a number of witnesses and their evidence. In brief, 12-year-old Mary Jobson became unwell, and strange phenomena began around her, such as knocking, water appearing from nowhere, and most significantly, a whole cast of voices, from deceased family members to the Virgin Mary, Jesus, and God. The incidents lasted for just a few months until Mary was cured. Or did they? In this episode, I'll be looking into the life of William Reid Clanny, the author of A Faithful Record of the Miraculous Case of Mary Jobson, which provides so much of the information we have on this case. Who was he, and how and why did he get involved in this strange story? At the start of the series, I got in touch with the Sunderland Antiquarian Society, the biggest local history group in the country, and they've come through with some excellent bits of information. A huge thanks to them, and especially Trevor and Chris. If you're interested in doing your own poltergeist research, your local history society is always a good place to start. In this episode, I'll also be sharing a big research breakthrough. I really needed a witness outside of Clanny's influence, and I found one. After 34 years, I never expected that there was one of the foolish pamphlets recording Mary Jobson's performances still in existence. But my attention having been called to the various copious extracts from it in your paper today, I feel it a matter of duty and conscience, especially as my name appears in the pamphlet, to tell what really occurred when I visited Mary Jobson. More on that at the end. First, Clanny, the main man. Dr. William Reid Clanny was born in Bangor in Ireland, now Northern Ireland. If you're interested in seeing him, head over to the Poltergeist Project Facebook page, where I've posted a painting of him from the Sunderland Museum's collections. He worked as a naval surgeon before settling in Sunderland around 1805. He went on to become the senior physician at Sunderland Infirmary, the head of Sunderland's Health Board, and physician to Prince Augustus Frederick, Duke of Sussex, the 6th son of King George III. As well as his medical skills, he would also turn his hand to other practical scientific pursuits. He was one of those 19th century guys who would just have a go. Boundless confidence. The northeast of England was a large coal mining area, and the amount of underground explosions caused by the use of open flames was a big problem. In 1812, one such explosion killed 92 men and boys at the Felling Colliery, and this really sharpened the focus on developing a safe way of delivering underground illumination. At the time, it was basically miners holding candles or mounting candles in the wall, so whenever they exposed dangerous gases such as methane, they would hit the flame, the whole thing would go up, so it was incredibly dangerous. It was Reid Clanny who invented the first working, if slightly impractical, safety lamp, later in 1812. He went on to write papers on the subject and did eventually reduce the size and weight and therefore practicality of his lamp, but ultimately it would be surpassed by George Stephenson's Geordie lamp, which was very popular in the northeast, and Humphrey Davy's design, the Davy lamp, which became popular almost everywhere else. But both of these were directly inspired, and some said copied, from Clanny's work. They'd both been to visit Clanny in Sunderland during their development stage. Clanny himself was acknowledged for his work. He won medals from the Royal Society for Arts. All this demonstrates that Clanny was a big deal, incredibly high regarded, respected and celebrated locally and nationally. He was clearly a man with a great scientific mind, but it's safe to say his involvement with Mary Jobson and our story did not add to his scientific or medical legacy. So how did he get involved? Clanny had heard the stories about Mary Jobson, like probably everyone had in Sunderland, and the strange goings-on at her home on Hendon Lane. It just so happened he was calling to see one of their neighbours, and was made aware that the Jobsons lived next door. His curiosity piqued, he called in to see what was going on. The little patient was in a wooden folding-up bed up on the right hand, and close to the door of the entrance. I observed that she was delicately formed. She did not appear to notice my entrance into the room, and that the eyes and their orbits were suffused with florid blood. She gave a vacant stare towards the centre of the room and continued in a supine posture. At the moment when I put forward my right hand to count her pulse, she made a very violent effort to avoid my touch, whilst her extended arm vibrated from, as I supposed, the energy employed by a person of feeble muscular power. From all I could observe, under such circumstances, I was convinced that the brain was the seat of the disease, but from delicacy to the medical attendants, who were unknown to me, I desisted from further investigation of the nature of the case. Clanny called again a few days later out of concern for Mary. He was very surprised to be told that she had made a complete recovery. He wished to see her again, but she was shy and tried to avoid him, but he did speak to her. "Why are you so shy with me? I am your friend. Pray, shake hands with me," which she did, with some reluctance. Again, Clanny returned to speak with Mary, and this time she was more forthcoming. When he asked her why she'd been so shy, she said, "Well, you are a stranger to me, for I had never seen you before that time, and I saw an angel standing at your back." So she was recovered, but still experiencing religious visions. That's a bit different to how this story has been presented before. Mary's mother then told Clanny all the details of her daughter's case, and Clanny believed it all. Mary then told him that he would receive several signs by the end of the year to convince him that a miracle had occurred in this little tenement house in Sunderland. From August 1840, Clanny started to experience the signs. To be honest, they're pretty unspectacular, especially for this case. He places great significance on a card falling from his mantelpiece, and then it's all just knocks and bangs, really, at different times of the day, with nothing particular happening otherwise. On another visit with Mary, Clanny asks her to quote some Bible passages. She's able to do this perfectly. She quotes Psalm 4, verse 17, Psalm 99, verse 2, Matthew chapter 28, verse 15, 1 Corinthians, the whole of chapter 15, 2 Corinthians, the whole of chapter 13, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 14 to 17, and so on and so on. It's amazing, really, that she's able to kind of deliver this unprompted. When he asks her how she's able to do it, she replies that she can see a figure with a dark complexion clothed in white who told her exactly what to say. Now Clanny was all in. "I am so thoroughly convinced of the truth and value thereof, that if the whole world differed with us, it would have no effect on shaking my belief. Some persons may be inclined to believe that errors of the senses may have produced all the signs and wonders which I record. Now, as a physician of many years' experience, I can testify that such impressions are untenable. For be it known that these signs and wonders are generally made manifest to several witnesses in the same room, or in different rooms in the same house, and who, upon comparing all that they heard or saw, never had occasion to differ in the least with each other, but always agreed in every respect. This, to me, is very striking." So that's how Clanny got involved. Really a coincidence of him being in the right place, and I think a genuine curiosity about what was going on. But why did he get involved? For me, there's only one reason here. Religious devotion. Clanny was clearly deeply religious and argued again and again that if, as a Christian, you believe the Bible documents God's miracles, why couldn't you believe that he could still perform them today? A lot of Clanny's contemporaries disagreed. He was bombarded by a whole tribe of scoffers and mockers, as one of the newspapers calls them. One review of Clanny's book appeared in the respected Provincial Medical and Surgical Journal in September 1841. It's really a full-on hatchet job of a review, very mocking in tone. It can't have been easy reading for Clanny, that appearing in a medical journal. Here's an extract. "Mesmerizers and the whole host of wonder-workers must hide their diminished heads before this genuine miracle of Dr. Reid Clanny. We had, in our ignorance, imagined that the days of miracles were long past, and thought that servants of the divine power might find a better occupation than imitating the Cock Lane ghost and tapping 3 times on Dr. Clanny's bedchamber door at the hour of midnight. In truth, the tale which we shall now endeavour to unfold is a melancholy example of the strange, fantastic tricks whereby the human mind occasionally manifests its aberrations." The author then describes several of the miracles, with a focus on the, as I mentioned, pretty underwhelming signs experienced by Clanny himself. Such, reader, are the miracles of Dr. Reid Clanny. What vapour can have bewildered the unhappy man's brain? Oof, going all in there. It's interesting that he references the Cock Lane Ghost, which is the subject of the latest Uncanny Cold Cases podcast, but I've not listened to that yet, so I'll not comment. But Clanny had pretty much predicted all this. He knew what the reaction would be, I think, from the medical and scientific world, although he may have hoped for better. He addresses it directly in his book, so I guess it won't have been a huge surprise to him. Still can't have been nice to have had his stellar reputation tarnished in this way in the twilight of his career. He wrote into lots of newspapers defending himself and describing his detractors as not only despicable, but also diabolical. I said way back in episode 1 that I could really do with another source for this story, a witness not published by Clanny. Whilst his book gives us several different voices, there's an inherent bias in his publication. As we've seen from his statements, he wanted to believe, regardless of what anybody said. Why don't we hear from Mary's other sceptical doctors, Grecian, Ward or Brown, or why don't we hear from Mary herself? She was young, but clearly intelligent and capable. It would have been fascinating to hear her account of the story. Well, after lots of digging, I found an account by someone who was there, in the room with Mary at the height of the phenomena. His account of the events is quite different to those we've heard. He was not convinced. In 1874, the Mary Jobson story had had a brief renewal of press interest, and having read articles, a surgeon called Thomas Beattie wrote a letter to the editor of the Newcastle Weekly Chronicle, which was then published. I'm going to read it in full. It's quite long, but I think it's worth capturing Beattie's thoughts on the whole story. Sir, after 34 years, I really never expected that there was one of the foolish pamphlets recording Mary Jobson's performances still in existence. But my attention having been called to the various copious extracts from it in your paper today, I feel it my duty and conscience, especially as my name appears in the pamphlet, to tell what really occurred when I visited Mary Jobson with my friend R.B. Embleton, the surgeon in attendance. If you remember, Embleton was really Clanny's star witness. My friend Embleton had often named his wonderful case, and it was to remove my incredulity that he invited me to accompany him to the house in Hendon where the Jobsons lived. There were just 2 rooms downstairs, into one of which we were ushered, and in the other the girl, Mary Jobson, was lying. Mr. Embleton first explained to Mrs. Jobson that I was very sceptical, and then asked her to allow me to investigate the matter thoroughly. She reluctantly consented to draw the curtains from the foot of the bed where the girl was lying, so that I could, from my seat near the door, have a full view of her countenance, and then the séance began. I don't know how long, Mr. Editor, a man can keep his eyes fixed on any person or object without tiring, but I know in this case it was a considerable time. When I was completely tired out, I asked Mrs. Jobson when the knocks for which I was waiting were going to begin. She very naively said that she feared the delay was because I was looking at her daughter, as the knocks always came almost directly at other times, and that if I would look away a bit, they would be heard directly. To which I replied I was sure of it. And sure enough, 3 rapid knocks were heard almost as soon as I'd turned my head away. I then asked to be allowed to examine the bed, and on turning down the clothes I found the girl was lying on a bed or a mattress, and I struck one of the bare laths with my hand, in order to produce similar sounds. But with all the pains I took, I could not discover the modus operandi, and so the mother triumphantly asked me if I was not satisfied, and on my reply, certainly not, I was given to understand that I'd better not call again. It's now, I think, about 10 years since that a woman came to consult me and asked me what I thought of Mary Jobson's performances. When I told her that I was sure the whole business was an imposture, she told me that I was right, for she knew that the girl had produced the knocks by striking her heel rapidly on the horizontal lath supporting the bed. In conclusion, I express my regret that this silly pamphlet should be brought forward in support of the very wicked and God-dishonouring spiritualistic manifestations which we are expected to believe. But I solace myself with the old saying, ex nihilo nihil fit, which is Latin for nothing comes from nothing. I remain, Mr. Editor, yours faithfully, Thomas C. Beattie, Surgeon, Seaham Harbour, 19th of September, 1874. P.S. As to the medical aspect of the case, I consider that the girl was simply in a highly hysterical condition, produced by the very unwise training, a sort of religious mania. Obviously, such heroic remedies as bleeding and blistering were not required in this poor girl's case and would never be used in the present day. So there we have it. In the words of Thomas Beattie, it all sounds rather more mundane. Knocks that would only happen when no one was looking, and even a woman suggesting that she knew how Mary was faking it, that she was doing it by kicking the side of her bed with her heel. There are a couple of things about the phenomena that are starting to interest me now. First, that it didn't stop when Mary recovered. Second, people like Mary's teacher Anne Clanny experienced things away from Mary in their own homes. I've gone back through Clanny's book again and started pulling out several incidents that have never been reported on before but fit with this idea that this story is about more than just Mary, more than just an ill girl. Was there a poltergeist appearing all over Sunderland? Or was something else haunting the minds of Sunderland's poorest communities? In 1831, less than a decade before our story, Sunderland was the location of the UK's first cholera outbreak. As I always say, you're on the research journey with me. I never know where these stories are going to end up. In the next episode of the Sunderland Poltergeist, I'll be exploring the impact of the 1831 cholera epidemic and sharing details of how paranormal experiences seem to have spread across the community just as quickly. A huge thank you for listening. As ever, please like, share, and get in touch. You can comment on whatever platform you listen on or email at thepoltergeistprojectpodcast@gmail.com. I've had lots of interesting emails recently suggesting cases, which is great, and also asking for my thoughts on things like the new Uncanny series. I might do a separate episode about these, a kind of non-series update on the overall Poltergeist project. Keep an eye on that one, but for now, goodbye.